the latest statements from the American administration regarding peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Hello friends, I'm Irina Prokofieva and this is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. Here are a few topics for today's episode. Punishment for friendship with Russia. There won't be a world war, but there will be an economic war. How did Donald Trump launch an offensive against Putin's allies? What will this lead to, and what benefits will Ukraine gain from the new trade war with the US? Russia has resumed its terror against Ukraine's energy facilities. At night, the enemy attacked energy and gas transportation infrastructure facilities in 6 regions, according to the Ministry of Energy. Shahed drone strikes caused damage to the energy sector in Sumy, Poltava, Donetsk, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhzhia regions. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, as a result of a UAV strike, equipment at one of the key substations in the city of Sumy was damaged. A significant part of the city and industrial consumers were left without electricity. The Russians also attacked gas transportation facilities in the Poltava region. Significant destruction has already been recorded there. Energy and gas workers are trying to restore power and gas supply as quickly as possible. Part of Sumy remains without electricity due to the overnight attack by Russian drones. Emergency repair work in the city continues until dusk. Hospitals and other critical infrastructure facilities are being reconnected first. 3 water intakes have already been launched. Water is gradually being restored to residents, and technical water is being delivered. Shops and coffee shops are operating on generators. Our Oksana Solodovnik will tell you more about the consequences of the enemy strikes. The Russians are not changing their tactics and continue to carry out mass attacks at night. Around 11 in the evening, several enemy drones flew over the city, but there were no explosions. And after 1 o'clock, at least 10 Russian Shaheds attacked the city of Sumy. This time, the energy system came under enemy strikes. In part of the city, electricity and water were lost. In the morning, the city water utility announced that it had switched its facilities to emergency backup power and also warned residents that due to the power outage of the booster pumps, water would be supplied according to a schedule 5 hours on, 5 hours off, with reduced pressure. In addition, trolley buses were not running in the morning. Only buses and minibuses were operating. Their number was increased. Energy workers assure that the power outage is temporary and are working to restore electricity supply. Around noon, electricity had already returned in some districts of the city, and trolley buses began to resume their routes. Let me remind you that for the past 4 days, the Russians have been deliberately targeting energy infrastructure. On Independence Day, there were power outages in the Sumy district. For the 3rd day, Bilopilia and Vorozhba have been without electricity, communication, or internet. There too, the power outage is a result of enemy attacks. 16,500 subscribers are without electricity. The previous morning, the Russians struck critical infrastructure and cut off power to all settlements in the Shoska community. And in Trostyanets, a missile hit the water tower. Hundreds of residents were left without water. However, life in the cities did not come to a halt. The healthcare system runs on generators. There are established points of invincibility where you can always charge your gadgets and at least call your family and drink hot tea while the restoration work continues. Oksana Solodovnik, Alexander Levin, Sumy, TSN 151. Since midday, traffic has been restricted on the Kherson-Mykolaiv highway due to increased activity of enemy drones. For 2 days in a row, the Russians have been attacking civilian vehicles there. The day before, 2 medics were injured by explosives dropped from a drone onto their vehicle. Authorities are urging residents not to use this road unless absolutely necessary, as it will be closed if enemy drones are detected. Work to protect the highway is actively ongoing, and videos showing the current state of the M14 road are being shared online. Russian drones have attacked the Poltava region. An enterprise in the energy sector was affected. Residential neighborhoods in Chernihiv were also shelled. 2 explosions occurred in the city during the day. It was a drone attack. A fire broke out at one of the enterprises. Later, a strike on the private sector was recorded. 2 city residents were injured. Residential buildings were damaged. In Kostiantynivka, Donetsk region, 5 FPV drones attacked civilian vehicles. 1 person was killed and 4 others were wounded. The Russians also struck Bukovе with bombs. They killed 1 person and injured 3 more. In Drobyshev, an FPV drone hit a car. 3 passengers were injured and 2 people were wounded as a result of the shelling of Pokrovsk. An elderly woman was injured during the attack in Zaporizhzhia region. An FPV drone struck a private house in Chervo-Nodniprovka. 3 more people were injured in the morning airstrike on the village of Uspenivka. Houses were damaged. In the morning, the Russians shelled Kherson with artillery. A woman was killed and another was wounded. Later, the occupiers dropped explosives from a drone in the suburbs. A man was hit in the attack. He was hospitalized. The Russians also attacked a farm in Novovoronivka. 2 workers were killed. However, the Russians themselves are having trouble with their energy sector. They hadn't yet managed to extinguish all the oil refineries hit by Ukrainian drones when a major oil pipeline, the Ryazan-Moscow line, exploded in Russia, which supplied petroleum products to the Russian capital. This was reported by the publication Babel, citing intelligence sources. Photos of the explosion are also being shared by Asian social media communities. Local residents report that explosions were heard in the area of the village of Bozatkovo in the Ryazan railway district, after which large-scale fires broke out. This oil pipeline is one of the main sources supplying Moscow with fuel. A few years ago, this main pipeline was repurposed for pumping gasoline, which is supplied by the state company Transneft. It supplies the Russian army. According to intelligence, the transportation of petroleum products to Moscow is currently suspended for an indefinite period. What exactly caused the explosion on the oil pipeline is currently unknown. Since the start of the full-scale war, over 200,000 cases have been opened in Ukraine for unauthorized abandonment of military units and more than 50,000 cases for desertion. More than 15,000 servicemen who left their units without permission have been notified of suspicion. This was emphasized by the Office of the Prosecutor General in response to a request from Ukrainska Pravda. Just this year, more than 100,000 cases have been opened for unauthorized absence, whereas in 2022, only 7,000 such incidents were recorded. Currently, taking advantage of the simplified mechanism for returning to service, which has been in effect for 8 months, 29,000 people have returned to the military. This mechanism allows servicemen to restore their monetary, food, and other provisions. Its validity expires on August 30th. The occupiers are trying to gain a foothold in 2 villages in the Dnipropetrovsk region. It became known the day before that fighting is already taking place in this region. However, as of yesterday, the invaders, divided into 2 small groups, were still on the outskirts of the villages of Zaporizhzhia and Novorihorivka. But now, according to Viktor Trehubov, spokesperson for the Dnipro Operational Strategic Group of Troops, the enemy has entered the settlements themselves, and fierce fighting is currently ongoing there. The defense forces are trying to push the enemy out of the Dnipropetrovsk region. In total, there have already been 80 clashes on the front since the beginning of the day. The situation is most difficult in the Lyman and Pokrovsk directions. However, in the Kramatorsk, Hulyai-Pol, Orekhiv, and Pridniprovsk sectors, not a single enemy attack has been recorded this morning. In Zaporizhzhia, the defense forces destroyed a Russian TOS-1 Son Sepyok flamethrower system, which cost $15 million. This is a weapon of mass destruction equipped with thermobaric munitions. At the moment of impact, they create a large cloud of incendiary mixture. The occupiers use it to strike at the positions of our defenders. The reconnaissance team, together with the UAV crew of the 102nd Territorial Defense Brigade, performed successfully. And the strike UAV unit of the 27th Pechersk Brigade of the National Guard in the Zaporizhzhia direction destroyed the Zemledelia engineering system, which the enemy uses for the rapid creation of minefields. The cost of this installation is $25 million. To end the war in Ukraine by the end of this year, a fresh deadline like this was mentioned at a meeting of the U.S. government by the special representative of the U.S. President, Steve Witkoff. At the same time, starting today, additional tariffs against India have come into effect, doubling the existing ones, which had previously been 25%. This is the promised response to the fact that the country is buying oil from Russia. TSN's international correspondent Yanis Lesarchuk will explain what exactly this threatens India with and discuss the latest statements from the U.S. administration regarding peace between Russia and Ukraine.
For close friendship with Russia,
to bring our trade and economic relations to a new level.
Starting today, the price has gone up. So far, it's only for one country, India. On top of the existing 25% tariff, another 25% has been added. People both expected this and didn't, because Donald Trump is known for his habit of making threats and then doing nothing. Just take his 10th ultimatum to Putin, for example.
in approximately 1 week from now, or perhaps in a slightly longer period, such as 2 weeks, or even extending to 2 or 3 weeks, specifically around the 2-week mark. It is anticipated to occur sometime in the approximate time frame of about 2 weeks from the present moment.
Electronics, that is, for example, Apple's multi-billion-dollar contracts as well as pharmaceuticals, are not affected. They were granted an exception, but the main victim of the increased import costs to America is, by half, the light industry. In particular, Indian textiles.
This is an absolute shock.
Leather exporter Shahimazad shows emails from American wholesale clients. Just half a month ago, they paused their orders, waiting to see how things would turn out.
All orders from the States have now disappeared. Everything is very bad. Of course, we sell our products both domestically and in other countries, but the existence of many factories depended entirely on America.
First and foremost, this is a blow to Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, who not so long ago promised to turn the country into a global export hub in order to compete in this field with its longtime rival, China. A clear demonstration, building a relationship with Washington by positioning oneself as a natural counterweight to China is not working out. Trump's eccentric advisor Peter Navarro, the architect of the American president's tariff policy, is trying to convince his fellow citizens that India is lying when it claims that Russian oil is vital to it.
India.
India never bought any oil from Russia before. I repeat, before Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, India hardly bought any Russian oil. At most, it covered just 1% of its needs with it. Now, Russian oil accounts for up to 35% of India's needs, and India claims that this oil is vital for cooling homes, cooking, or fueling cars. But that's nonsense.
Another Indian industry that, unlike electronics, is at serious risk of suffering from the new American tariffs. The jewelry industry.
My prediction is that more than 100,000 workers in our industry will lose their jobs.
As always with sanctions, we'll have to wait and see how they work. Will Russia have enough money to bail India out of trouble with new deals? Or will Narendra Modi's government come to an end here due to economic difficulties? Meanwhile, the American president continues to threaten economic warfare and, as has become usual lately, after saying something unpleasant for Russia, immediately balances it with something about Ukraine.
There will be no world war, but there will be an economic war. The economic war will be bad for Russia. And I don't want that. But we'll see. Because Zelensky is not innocent either. It takes two to tango.
An American journalist asks how Ukraine is supposed to dance this tango if Russia, which hasn't seen fair elections in decades, calls Zelensky illegitimate because he stayed in office due to martial law.
I have a question for Steve Witkoff, if I may. This weekend, Sergei Lavrov stated that Putin will not sign a peace agreement with Zelensky because Russia considers him illegitimate. What difference does it make? It doesn't matter what they say. Steve can answer that, but I can too. It doesn't matter what they say, it's all just for show. It's all nonsense, you understand?
Trump's special representative Steve Witkoff insists by the end of 2025, Russia's war against Ukraine will be over.
Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Israel, and Hamas are all involved. This week, meetings are ongoing regarding all three of these conflicts, and we hope to resolve them by the end of this year. Your team is nothing short of extraordinary. And the only thing I want is for the Nobel Committee to finally come together and realize that you are the best candidate to ever receive this prize.
There isn't a single person, either in the White House or outside of it, who doesn't know how much Donald Trump craves to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Counting on this, Putin is trying to force him to pressure the weaker side into peace, because that's easier. And Trump has already struck at weaker targets more than once. After all, no additional sanctions have been imposed so far against China, which imports much more Russian oil than India does. Yana Sturchak, Anatoly Korop, TSN 1+1.
To support peacekeepers with air cover and intelligence data. Such security guarantees for Ukraine have been announced by the United States of America. According to sources from the Financial Times, this is the proposal that American representatives voiced to their European counterparts. Washington is ready to assist with intelligence, surveillance, command and control, as well as air defense systems in order to ensure the deployment of European forces in our country. Sources cited by the publication indicate that this could involve American aircraft, logistics, and ground-based radars, which would provide an air shield for Ukraine. The Financial Times notes that the implementation of the U.S. proposal depends on the willingness of European countries to send their troops. At present, only 10 countries have agreed to do so. The The publication also writes that Ukraine's security guarantees may include a demilitarized zone. This zone is to be patrolled by troops from a third country, agreed upon by both Ukraine and Russia. The forces of this third country could be deployed deeper within our territory, serving as an additional line of defense. However, this would be behind the shield of Ukrainian troops. How do you assess this idea of security guarantees? Be sure to write about it in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. Your opinion matters. Of course, I genuinely look forward to receiving your valuable likes and insightful comments on this video. The exciting journey of TSN continues onward, and with great anticipation, we are now ready to move on to the next segment.